Can you see my screen now?
Yeah.
Yes, I can see it.
Yep, we can see it.
Great. All right. Okay, so today is a talk about how do we move from pollution to regeneration and to have a cleaner lifestyle, cleaner production, cleaner farming, etc. Pollution is in many places, in the water, in the soil, plastics. There's many forms of pollution, and you all have a different view on it. And we're just going to talk through that today. Just some basics on where this is situated. Humanity Solutions is the company organizing this. We are based in the Netherlands, and we aim to develop solutions, initiate solutions and movements for big problems that affect more than 1 billion people. And we also try to empower the organizations doing so. So that's here on the top left, that's the Humanity Solutions. On the bottom right, you see the little logo. Summanity is the event format from Humanity Solutions. So that's one way that we have to bring different people and different experiences together and to find relevant experts on these topics and connect them to each other. We are, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later. On the right side, there is Foresight Transitions. It's more kind of, as you can say, it's more the consulting angle. It's the thing that we use to help organizations prepare themselves for the future. And that means help them understand which properties to acquire. These could be startups or innovations or patents or which real estate. It helps governments to decide which policies to make, and it helps influencers to help their community and followers with also moving them into a safer and better life. Today, you also see a number of other boxes on the screen. We are launching with Humanity Solutions a number of initiatives to stimulate solutions and stimulate communities. And these are element investments for us. These are websites that we launch where things can be built on. So today later in the talk, we can look at stoppolluting.org. How could we use that for the benefit of mankind? What could we do with that? But that's just one of the questions we can look at today. So that's the broader picture. We're thrilled to have you with us. And the general idea is that this year we have 12 Summanity Transition Talks like this around different topics. We had one around health at the beginning of the year, one around ending lies. Today, stopping pollution, but we have 11 more, and it's one way to develop different communities and networks around these big transitions that we are facing. The main idea of today is that we all speak more or less equally, ideally. We have young and old, experts and more amateurs, but it's the mixture that is hopefully interesting. And when I'm going to ask you to talk, it will be mainly about the following questions. What do you see happening around you in the pollution context? What are the trends you see, the risks, the opportunities? How do you or your organization deal with that? What are you doing? Maybe you have something useful for others. And whether or not you have other tips, tools, and tricks you recommend personally. For example, what to stop doing or let go, what to do or to acquire, to purchase. Is there anything someone or to invest in? Who to follow or partner with? Are there interesting influencers or experts you say they're good, or which policies you recommend? These are some of the questions that could be valuable for others and that we can also add into our network to give it more visibility. So let's start with that. We do a round. Some other people may join later in the call because more people have signed up, but it's tricky. But we'll see where that goes, and then we can have an open conversation. And at the end of the talk, we can look at this stoppolluting.org, but also the question North and South look very differently to this topic. Maybe it's also interesting to look at, can we find a common ground, like between North perspectives and Southern perspectives on what to do with this together or in common. Okay, is this clear, or does anyone have some questions around the basics?
It's okay, Wilfred.
Yeah, very good.
Very good.
Okay, great. I'm just going to see who has arrived. There is, we have about 10 people. Let's go. I will start from the top, simply on the screen. But Esther and Gero, maybe I'll first skip you if you don't mind, and then we move to. Let's start with Chenge. How do you look at pollution? How do you what can you say about this, Chenge?
Okay, I have two perspectives on this because I am African, but I've lived in China for about 6 years now. And I'm also a researcher in China. So yeah, from trends, I guess I'll talk about it both ways. In China, the biggest thing is obviously air pollution. I think everyone knows about it. But actually, over time, with all the policies in place, air pollution has drastically decreased in China. And it's also evident, like the skies are a bit bluer than before. Well, than before the time I was here. And yeah, things have changed and looked up. But from an African perspective, I think the biggest challenges we face is like that there's not much recycling going on, and so like plastics and all this other rubbish just piles up, and usually also I'm particularly Zimbabwean, so in my country the like garbage system is not very good, so everyone just does whatever they can to get rid of the waste that they produce, and sometimes it's not done properly and it ends up being worse off. So for example, like people maybe burn plastics in their backyard, which causes even more like air pollution on a minimum scale, but then it's a little dangerous. So that's something to really consider. But because maybe the government isn't doing much to help with that, so people have to resort to their own means, so that is something that's challenging. And most importantly as well, like water treatment is a big issue. Some of the water has been polluted over time, like by industries and stuff, like textile industry sometimes just like dump their waste into the rivers, like local rivers. And again, it's a policy issue. There aren't enough policies or at least penalties for those kinds of companies who are doing that, or at least if they are, then it's not taken as seriously, and they probably have a kind of connection that means that they won't get into too much trouble over it, so they keep on doing it over and over. And then the local people really suffer because of this, because they rely on the water from the rivers, and then it's not really good for everyone, I guess. So personally, I would think that the loophole in most situations I personally see is policies. When the policies are really good, like in China, and they really make sure that they instill the policies, not just like say it and then it doesn't happen, that really works. Like if they're enforced as well as like brought about, then there is really a big change. For example, with the air pollution issue, like there have been really strict standards for like factories and companies and all of these things, and they've done a lot of outsourcing to like make sure that the air pollution isn't concentrated in one place and it's hard to control. So that really helps, in my opinion. I've found that it really, really helps. And so obviously over time, there have been some opportunities to help out with mostly water pollution, I'd say. The one project I did research on recently was about the treatment of wastewater from industries. So I think that really helps, especially on a local scale. Maybe it doesn't make much difference on like a grand scale, but it really helps locally if if like the water around like rural areas in my own country can be treated, then it would solve part of the water problem. And yeah, I think that's it mostly.
Thank you very much. It's interesting. Thanks a lot. And you have this experience from China and Africa.
Yeah.
It's good to have you. For everyone, it's also nice if you mix it up with your professional experience or placing where you are, and then also saying what personally in your own life, what are the conclusions or what maybe you take. But this was very helpful. Thanks, Jenke. Let's go to Marco.
Okay. Thank you, Wilfred. Hello for everyone. Talking about pollution, as our French that talk just in a moment, she told out something very similar, that the problem that we have here in my country, Colombia, and I think all over the world, it looks similar in everywhere. We have pollution because too many cars going around without control. And of course, there are many political policies, rules, but the people don't follow them. So finally, everyone, we contaminate the air, the soils, the water, cut down the forests, rivers, and oceans, and everything. So we have a really big problem in our planet. And I think the solutions could come from everyone, from all the population. Just everyone put the efforts to recover the good quality of air with nice practices, also in agriculture, and not cut down the forest, not degrade the soils. And I think we need too much education in order to understand all the problems. I think that the way to follow the rules, just coming from I say from everyone, because sometimes we cannot understand the problems, we cannot follow the rules, and we don't know why must do it. So that's why this experience that we are talking about is very interesting, because the problems come from different points or countries from our planet. And I think we have to offer our experience and knowledge and understanding and everything in order to get nice solutions. Sometimes the solution could be very simple. Not to do many things very complicated. Just follow some rules, very simple rules, personal rules, and protect our environment. I think this is my opinion that I have right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Marco. Maybe people don't know, but Marco has 30 years of experience in soil, like a soil expert, soil expertise. So that's, maybe later we can also get to more concrete elements for soil pollution. But this was very helpful. Thanks. Diego, what do you have to add?
Hello. So good day, everyone. I'm actually a first-year student, a freshman student, and in the Ateneo de Manila University. I'm studying for a bachelor's of science degree in biology. That's because, like everyone I think here. We are passionate environmentalists. Personally, I'm an aspiring marine scientist, but I am the operations branch coordinator of an organization, the Growth Initiative. And what we found is we focus on intersectional environmentalism. What that is I think, as Chenge elaborated on earlier, is that when we tackle environmentalism, you also have to acknowledge that there's a social aspect, there's a political aspect, and the policies as well. And you have to take all of that into account. So from a pollution perspective, I mean, in the Philippines, there are over 100 million people here, which is frankly quite amazing. Everyone's densely packed. So that means there's lots of air pollution. The statistic, I think, is it's set to increase in our country by 3.9% per year. And around 45 out of every 100,000 people die due to air pollution in the Philippines. So you can imagine it's quite a big issue. And then you have plastic pollution, which there are no proper sewage systems and no proper waste disposal systems in the Philippines. So you have lots of people throwing their trash out into the rivers, out into the seas, especially during this pandemic. A lot of the reefs, I've seen videos. A lot of the reefs have not been doing well because you have plastic trash getting caught up, washing up on beaches because of the medical waste, which is an added problem. In terms of opportunities, myself and my organization, we launched this thing called the Carbon Cutter Project, which seeks to remedy the air pollution aspect as well. Because what the carbon cutter is, I'll just explain it briefly to you guys, is it's a device that goes inside the engine. And what it does is it makes sure that all the fuel in the engine is burned so that you don't have the unburned fuel going out into the atmosphere. That's what causes the fuel smell when you smell, engines. And so they tested it. It's a government approved device. It's been proven to have 15% less. It reduces carbon dioxide pollution by 15%. It reduces hydrocarbon pollution by 80% and reduces fuel consumption by 30%. And that's where the social aspect comes into play, because as an org, we're trying to donate them to tricycle drivers. So these guys have been heavily affected by the pandemic in particular, and they can save, I guess in euros, it's around €0.50 per day. And for us here, that's like a meal. So you can imagine how important that is to them. And so far, we've installed 75 of these units. We're aiming to install 340. And from our estimates, that's a reduction of 9 tons of carbon dioxide from the air per year, and a reduction of 3,600 liters of raw fuel from the air every year, as well as the take-home pay. And the units themselves are actually manufactured by persons with disabilities. So there's a social aspect as well. And as an organization, personally, I think it's important that we make sure that we are able to not just focus on the environment, but maybe go beyond that. And that's why I think the concept of grassroots is very important, because in the Philippines, unfortunately, as a third world country, I think environmentalism, in a sense, like sustainability, it's sort of a privilege, because we have to admit that environmentally conscious, environmental products, they're not cheap. I think they're more expensive than plastic, for example. But you can't really blame some people for polluting, because they can't afford to look 5-10 years into the future when they're trying to survive for tomorrow or the next week. And so us, through our Carbon Cutter project, we hope maybe that €0.50 that they save every day, maybe that can form a foundation into maybe financial security, environmental consciousness. We want to afford them that luxury of maybe looking towards the next generations and seeing what planet their children will inherit. Because it's not that they don't care. I think it's more of they can't afford to care. So in a sense, we have to work with the people, the frontliners of the climate crisis. So that's fishermen, farmers, the people who are on the ground, because whether they know it or not, they're the ones who fight the effects of climate change firsthand, So I think that's something we need to consider as well, is we have to work with them, and hopefully, especially in third world countries such as mine, we have to provide them that opportunity to look ahead. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Great, and a very interesting initiative. With Humanity Solutions, we have a website called carboncleansing.com and Stop Polluting, but maybe these are also initiatives we could highlight there or promote there if you're interested in that, or we can follow up.
Sure.
Okay, one of the two Nelsons has to leave before, but I don't know which Nelson that is. Is it Rotino or Wainana?
It's actually me. I'm very sorry about that. Certain things popped up, so I won't be able to attend the entire stretch of the meeting.
No problem. Maybe you can share your wisdom now then.
Okay, sure thing. To begin with, my name is Nelson Ruto. I'm a third-year student of journalism and communication at Makerere University here in Uganda. And I'm also a journalist, a practicing journalist. So my contribution to this would be the role of journalism in climate change and just educating, informing, and generating conviction towards action that would mitigate or avert the phenomenon. So I'll start by saying that it's through the media that most people first interface with information, and through that information, they also generate their own opinions about certain things. So if the media is playing its role very well, then you'll have a more educated population, one that's enriched with the information that they need to, one, formulate their opinions on certain things, and also two, get involved in the things that matter. And the second thing that the media do is to hold power or authority to account. But from that particular role, you can tell that the media is now policing people. But one thing that usually gets swept under the rug is the fact that there is nobody to police the media. There's nobody to ask whether or not they are doing the most that they can do, whether or not they're covering climate change stories the way they should. And when I realized that, I decided to write a
Nelson, I think we lost you.
I think it could be a problem with the internet connection.
Yeah, that's a pity. He was just going to tell us the solution to all our problems. Maybe he comes back later. If not, we might send you guys his opinion in writing. Let's move to the next Nelson then for now. Nelson Wainaina. Good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you too. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay. Hey everyone again, my name is Nelson. I'm also from Uganda and I also went to Makerere University. I work as a sociologist in the Ministry of Lands, Housing and Urban Development. And this topic is particularly interesting to me because Uganda, and I think it applies to all third world countries, we have problems with pollution. And my perspective is that it's really tricky for third world countries, as Diego pointed out, that governments, for example, in third world countries have to get the balance between pollution and also being environmentally conscious, because the scenario here, the catch-22 here are also the big spares. So government, whether it is policy or whether it is people, if you ask people, do you think we should shut down this factory that produces all these polythene bags that we see all around the city? Yet it's that's the same company that employs them. So obviously they will say no. So it speaks to how these people, they know that it is wrong, but it is also their source of livelihood. So they overlook it. The other thing is that Uganda has around 80% of the population depends on agriculture, and we are just making that transition into industrialization. Actually, one of the biggest pillars of the current government now is to make more industries, like to make the transition from agro to manufacturing. Obviously, with factories, that means more pollution. Now, the problem, again, like I've said, is that to manage this is tricky, because you, at one point, you want to get the marginal gains from an industrialized community, But again, it comes with other issues of pollution that you really cannot put away. Then I think the other issue, the other perspective that I want to talk about is the lifestyle one. Again, like Diego pointed out, that lifestyle, all green solutions are not cheap. I would love to drive a Tesla, but I would opt for a Toyota because I can manage to fuel it, and I can manage to maintain it and things. And this goes on to in many other items. For example, if the green products that come out are fashionable, and one thing with fashion is that with fashion, the satisfaction one gets from consuming fashionable things is exclusivity. If someone else doesn't have it and I have it, then I feel good. And companies know this, and they make these products that are green very, very expensive for the common people to afford. So I think the solutions actually, this is where I divert from Diego's view, is not actually to look at the end consumer, because the end consumer just inherits the cost from the company. I think the intervention should be with the companies themselves. If we could limit, for example, let me speak about the polythene bag. If there is no polythene bag factory, and we have to buy things at the supermarket, for example, I think as people, maybe we'll have sisal bags, maybe we'll I don't know, some other material I know people are innovative and they will find another option. But as long as these companies keep making these cheap, affordable products, items like polythene available, and the government still encourages them because of the taxes they get from them, I think the pollution problem will still persevere all through the time. So I think from there, from my perspective, I think we should look at the factories, the biggest polluters, and engage them directly to stop supplying the items instead of looking at the demand side, the people who are getting them to use them because they have no other option. I think that's my contribution. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Nelson. Tom, it's been a while I saw you. Good to see you.
Hey, Wilfried. Yes, it has been a while. Hello to everyone. I'm afraid I'm a bit of the amateur here in the company. I'm really interested in the stories you have to tell. My wife and I are pretty much engaged in this story. We bought, so I live in Belgium, and we bought this finca in Spain, which at the moment is a kind of very poor land because it has been the agriculture that has been put down there is really kind of plowing, and it's just olives. It's the only thing that they grow there, so it brings a very poor landscape as well. So we are going to try to transform it, make the soil rich again. So I was really interested, Wilfried, when you said that Marco is a specialist in soil, because one of the objectives of what we're trying to do is to make the soil rich again. And we're going to try and see to it that we have, more kinds of plants that can survive there. And in doing so, hoping also to fight pollution in a way, because I mean, just the olive trees and poor land at the moment, I don't think it's pretty good for the ecology, and that all kinds of comes in together in one place. So that's what we're doing. And when Wilfried announced this webinar, I was really interested to hear your stories, and have to say that that I'm happy that I'm here because I'm hearing really interesting things from really intelligent people. So I'm afraid that I can't give as much, and I'm more on the receiving side here. But if you guys are interested, and I mean, Wilfried, I will certainly keep you posted on that project we have going in Spain, because I think we will encounter a lot of aspects of the things that you are working on at this moment.
Yeah,
So
thanks,
that's it
Tom.
from me.
Thank you.
It's yeah, we see one of the talks is about there's many people who live in a crowded city or in a smaller and smaller apartment who long for a connection with the land or a community or a place outside. And so there are other people like you, Tom, that we're also trying to see whether we can connect them or help them. And yeah, that's also part of our looking at foresight properties, is like kind of properties like what you're building. Good to have you with us. I think Nelson is back. Maybe he can finish.
Hello.
Hi, Nelson.
Yes, I'm very sorry about that internet issues, but let me run through this really quick. So I was saying that the role of the media is to inform, educate, and also to hold power and authority to account. But through that last role, we noticed that we are playing the policing role, and yet nobody is policing us or asking whether or not we are doing the most that we could, whether or not we are reporting it accurately. So when I came to that realization, I took it upon myself to write a story. And through that experience, I realized how shifty things could be, because I walked to so many different people asking if they could contribute to the story. And I could tell there was a lot of evasiveness. I do not know if it was because they did not have the answers to the questions that I was asking, or if they did not want to be held to account, or maybe they were just busy. Maybe they were genuinely busy. But through one conversation, I began to realize there are a lot of misconceptions. I asked this one journalist why there was more coverage in print media here in Uganda than on broadcast. And he said that Ugandans in particular, and Africans generally, are not really concerned or are not interested in the climate change story, which shook me. I would strongly contend that that's not true, but even if it were to be true, we cannot avoid it because of that. It's the role of a journalist to make what's important relevant, even when individuals that are concerned do not recognize that. So that's one of the issues that, yes, came up. But then also there is the monetary issue, the fact that most of the media establishments that we have here seek profit at the end of the day. So they're going to chase after the story that will sell and relegate the story that people might not be interested in. So that's one of the hurdles that we must jump over before we realize what we're aiming towards achieving. And then aside from that is this other issue where people think that climate change is something that can be siloed or restricted to the science department of the news or the technology department, and yet you can find an angle or a way of reporting on climate change through the political beat or the sports beat, because there's so many ways in which this phenomenon affects us. So that aside, if we're looking for solutions now, we would look into funding the media such that we're able to report on these stories, because there's also a certain expense that goes into these things. There's a climate journalist here in Uganda that said that his biggest challenge throughout his 10 plus years of reporting on climate change is just getting to the place where he can get the information from. So sometimes he's hitching rides or just timing and waiting for maybe when a certain community is heading somewhere such that he can tell that story, and he tries to kill like 15 birds with one stone, reporting on 5 different stories while at it. So funding is a very, very important issue. And also the fact that there is bound to be an increase in misinformation, seeing the fact that more people are jumping onto this and more people are getting interested. And with that, you have more opinions just running around, and we have to consolidate on the authentic or credible news sources that we have right now, such that we are sharing very accurate news. I think generally that's it for from me. I wouldn't like to take too much of our time. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Nelson. Just for your information, we also had the last month's Summanity Transition Talk was about false information and fake news and misinformation, and that the recording has been uploaded on our YouTube channel, Humanity Solutions. That's it. There's a YouTube channel there with that talk. And tomorrow there's a follow-up of that talk if you're interested in meeting some of the people working on that topic. Thanks a lot.
Sure thing. You're welcome.
Okay, Esther, do you want to share your views?
Yes. Hello, everyone.
Hello, sir.
My name is Esther Miriam Mutenyo. I'm Ugandan. And I don't want to teach, but I wrote things down in preparation for this moment. I'm also
Esther, the sound is a bit, there's something wrong with the sound, I think. Maybe the microphone.
Okay, can you hear me better?
Yes, much better. Yeah.
Okay, so yes, I'm Ugandan, and I'm also an amateur. So yes, let me say I am a student in Chambogo University. I'm doing a diploma in computer science, and I work with Humanity Solutions. This, I'm going to share my opinion, I guess. Now, in Uganda, specifically Kampala, again, it's a third world country. So our most basic problem is, first of all, getting people to care about what is going on in the country. Air pollution is something that we have not really been suffering with in the past few years. It's probably been there, we just didn't notice it till like a few weeks ago when we looked at Kampala, and Kampala is a major city, and there was this cloud of smog, and we were like, okay, what is that? It was all over Twitter, all over the news. We're thinking, what is that? And those people were like, that's all the smoke and dust. And we're like, oh, wow, that's what that is. But it was really, really crazy. One of the biggest problems, I think, is regulation of the cars in this country. We have, like, cars are imported, like probably one of the most imported things in this country. Cars come in mostly without regulation. I mean, there's a bit of regulation, but and that contributes a lot to the air pollution. That and the fact that we're moving from agriculturalism to industrialization. And for the most part, they're focusing on getting people to join the industrial side of everything, other than getting people to join the industrial side well. They're thinking, okay, put up industries, but no one's talking about what the industries are going to do to the air, what the industries are going to do to the water. There is no proper water management thing, no, what's the thing called? A sewerage system. Yes, doesn't exist in Uganda. I've not seen it anywhere, unless maybe with houses and plumbing, that kind of thing. But for the streets, water runs where it goes, and that's how it is. So factories, the dumping ground of factories is either a nearby swamp or a lake that is also nearby, or a pond. It's always just a water body that is nearby. No one talks about treating the waste. No one talks about where the waste is going, what it's going to do to the things that live in there. Last year in February, a sort of a state of, not emergency, but it ended up in the news on the front page anyway. Fish in the major Lake Victoria, which is also known as the source of the Nile, were no longer fit to eat. People still eat the fish. It was on the front page, but yeah, they were told that the lake is so polluted that fish will no longer be edible from there. I'm very sure people are still eating the fish. We're going to see the repercussions of that much later on. But yeah, again, as Diego said, people can't afford to care. Most people in, at least I'd say 75% of the population lives on a subsistence sort of life. It's hand to mouth in this country. You're paid, that money is going to work for the next month until and then there are other people who work daily. They walk on the roadside selling clothes or vegetables or whatever is nearby. And the money they get at that point in time is what's going to pay for their dinner or for their breakfast tomorrow, so that they can go back and do more selling. No one is caring about like, okay, so I'm selling bags in polythene, I'm selling this and this. And at some point, there was a bylaw that was passed about polythene bags that worked for about a year, where all the supermarkets moved on to cloth bags and paper bags. And it was a beautiful thing to see. You could not see what we call kavera, polythene bags anywhere. They were very, very hard to find. And if you found them, they were just not exactly, they weren't for use. They were for other things at that point, covering hair when it rains or that kind of stuff. So yes, essentially it's regulation. I want to say it's on the government, but it's also on us. The fact that we start something, but we never really finish it. Like we see a problem and we're like, okay, yeah, we care about it for like the next 2 weeks. And then after that, there's also back to business as usual. So yeah, and the final one, again, wow, there's so much I have to talk about. Pollution, the soil pollution due to unregulated and uneducated farming methods. We are essentially a farming country. We farm. There's a lot of land for farming. If most people who have like a piece of land in their backyard, they're probably growing some vegetables in there. Now, for the most part, the people who do large-scale farming, they're obviously going to resort to, the land is fertile, but after a while, they're going to resort to chemical fertilizers, which are good when applied in moderation and with education. Most people, it's illiterate. They buy the fertilizers and they just dump them there. And nitrogen fertilizers are the kinds that they don't really go away. You apply them to the soil, and if it's too much, the plants are not going to take it up. They just rush. It rains, runs off into the water, and that becomes another problem. So, yeah, I guess this would be best looked at with Nelson's perspective, the journalistic perspective, getting people to continue caring about pollution and what it is going to do to the people ahead of us. Yeah, I think I'm done.
Thanks, Esther. Gero, do you have something to add?
Hello.
Hi, Gero.
I'm looking for a bit of light. Hello.
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 I also come from Uganda. My name is Gero Mpyangu. I am an IT professional. I've just graduated from Chambo University. And I do believe a lot of the issues we have been talked about. I won't say I have a new solution for anything. I would look at it in the perspective of community, where, let's say, if I'm able to make a change in the people around me, it might be really small, but it might, it can change the effect in our current environment. I live in a small Chambogo. It's really close to Banda. And these are just some places where we find that one of the problems which causes pollution, waste management, is such a terrible one. In short, there is trash everywhere. On the streets, there's trash. Let's say if you go to a toilet, if you go to a room, we have a culture of living with trash everywhere around us. And I would agree and say that the issue of people not caring about it is the biggest one. If we have any way of making them care about it, that would be what would change our community, change our environment, I have is, what would it take to see a difference? It's a question I don't have the answer to, but it's something which I really want to see. I want to see that change around me. And I'm looking forward. I'm grateful because listening to all of this gives me so many answers and things which I could even try to implement in the small community. I do volunteer with youth. I enjoy working with the youth and children. I believe that they're not only the people of tomorrow, but the people of today. I know that maybe if I could implement education on pollution into some of the short programs that we do, that would be able to make a change, which would at least give us the chance to see something different. Thank you.
Thanks, Garo. And it's great you bring it back to your immediate neighborhood also. Okay, a lot of people from Uganda today, and but very interesting, very still different perspectives. Thanks a lot. One of the questions that kind of comes up and that I also would want to raise is that, for example, we have this website, we start some initiatives that we see, can this work? Can we bring communities around this? And one of us was stoppolluting.org, but there's also more and more, let's say in Europe or in the Netherlands where I live, I have more and more the feeling that awareness is there. Climate change is often in the news. It is like there is COVID, there is climate issues. And so people are almost constantly reminded of the big climate change problem, at least in the Netherlands, I would say. The Netherlands is also a country very close to the sea. And so it's existential for the Netherlands to think about this and think about this ahead of time. And the Netherlands is a country with quite some resources, so it's in a somewhat privileged position to be able to do this. And it has a long history of let's say, fighting against the sea or trying to, I don't know, make sure that they don't get flooded. But so I feel here there's almost the feeling of like, yeah, we know it already. We've seen it, we heard about it, it's there, but people still also think in their personal life, they don't quite yet make the link with their personal life or their own job or their own actions that contribute to it. Or so there's this general reflection, but not yet the personal consideration. So that's one thing. Another thing that's happening here now is that there's more and more, like there's more and more talk of, okay, maybe this whole talk of climate change and stopping pollution is just another ploy of the West or the white male to colonize the South again, so that they don't develop and they keep their forest pristine and their nature pristine, and Europe and the West or US can remain kind of the empires that they have been and they are somewhat. So, and that's one question I would like to ask the group because it comes up also, and I find it interesting. So we have the Philippines, which is maybe like in between. We have Uganda here, we have Colombia, we have, like, how do you look at this? Is it possible to find what is the common grounds we can find between the North and South? Or what is this kind of development that is potentially green, but also cheap and can work? And I think Diego gave like an interesting example, like one step forward, something concrete and real. I don't know, some thoughts around that. Do you trust Europeans when they talk about stopping pollution? Do you, and also just what are you angry about in this context? What is not okay for you? What are you fed up with? Just a little bit more emotional stuff maybe could help us. Let's go.
If I may speak, actually, from a Philippine perspective now, I think the Philippines, I'll just give a brief background on Philippine history now. Ever since the 1500s, the Philippines has been invaded by the Spanish, the Americans, the Japanese during World War II. And honestly, the Filipinos we as a culture, I think, we look very highly towards Western culture, towards the innovations from Europe, from America, etc. So, with regard to your question, that do we despise it? I think the answer is no. I think in our case, sometimes the opposite is true, that we actually have so much opportunities here. We're an archipelago. We have so much biodiversity. I think there's a lot of smart Filipinos, but they're not given the opportunity to thrive, especially in the scientific field. And perhaps as a culture, we lack belief in ourselves, that we always believe that imported products are always better, even if they're more expensive. As I think Nelson mentioned earlier, it's a status symbol. And a lot of Filipinos want that status regardless of their social class, no? But yeah, I think that's my input, is we don't antagonize, so to speak, the West. I think for the Philippines, maybe in a sense, we become too dependent sometimes, that we don't remember how to walk on our own. So, and that's a bit of an issue, I notice. But yeah, that's all.
Okay. Any other views on this? Thanks. Yeah, Marco.
Thank you, Wilfred. Just to complement my comments that I have spoken before, we have in Colombia, and also in Brazil, in Peru, and a little bit in Ecuador, we share our border, the big region and very important region for the world, that is Amazonia in Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
And the big problem that we have is deforestation. So every year, too many hectares completely deforested, and no trees, and many problems because that. In Brazil, maybe almost 2 years ago, there was a very big problem with the fire. And also in our big mountains or high mountains, we have all the soils already eroded, completely degraded. And it caused a very problems with when the rain season comes, because it causes very high inundation. Right now we have this problem in many places, especially in flat areas in agriculture, and caused problems in small towns and social problems too. So I think we already have the diagnostic with the pollution and the environment problems around the world, but I think we must put in practice many projects in order to recover or to protect our environment. In everywhere we check, we read many diagnostic very well done, but sometimes the governments don't care. The people, the same situation. They suffer every year, every rain season, or sometimes the opposite season, when the season is dry, there is no water, for example, for agriculture, even for people consumption. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks,
yeah, I used to have something to say about that. In my country, I wouldn't say they antagonize it exactly. It's just that, like other people said, they just don't care. Like, I would say that most people don't even think about pollution. They see the like littering and all these things, but they don't really care about it, because it's just about this mindset of like they're like European problems and then the African problems, and pollution is not one of them. So most people are really more concerned about like food security or getting clean water. That I would probably say, like, if I was to walk up to someone in the street and start a conversation with them about pollution, they would kind of not be very open to it. But because they feel like it's something that doesn't affect them, especially if I talked about like air pollution, they don't really care about that. And maybe it's also because like in the main city, right? Like in the big cities, that's where it's most polluted. But generally, Zimbabwe only has about 14 million people, so it's not overcrowded. And in the countryside, it's also very clean. Like it would be cleaner, obviously, than in the capital city. So some people, actually most people, don't really think about this on a daily basis. And even if they did like see it in the news or whatever, they wouldn't be open to discussing it or even care about it. So that is a really big problem.
Yeah, I mean, if the environment is still clean there, then it's also less of a problem there. But for global climate change, then maybe they don't realize it's a problem, or they can't. They're not helping out. Yeah. Okay. Anyone else wants to add something on this, or Nelson?
Thank you very much, Wilfred. To speak on that, actually, as they were speaking, there is a very concise example I can give from my country in Uganda. I come from the western part of the country, and in Uganda, we still have kingdoms. Now, we were colonized by Britain, and one of the biggest issues in my kingdom that was going on previously is that our kingdom sued the Kingdom of England on reparations about the resources they used during the time that they were colonizing us. Now, the issue with that, it came out just recently. A local company took up a certain forest, and they started they took it for sugarcane growing. Obviously, as a factory, it comes with deforestation, pollution, and all those things. Now, we had an envoy from the north, that is EU, and some British people. They came us to the kingdom and started educating us. It's good to keep forests. It's good you shouldn't pollute. This is the ecosystem and what have you. And this speaks to the point that Nelson brought about, that it's very important for people to be educated about the importance of these things, because when it came to that, then it became like a patriotic response to climate change, because to pollution, because the common people, the local people were the reaction to all this was like, so you cut our trees when you were colonizing us, you took them, built Buckingham Palace, and the Queen is living very well. And now that we are using our resources again to develop now ourselves, so you come with this climate change gospel and tell us, you know what, don't cut that, don't use that. So I think as me as Nelson, I understand the dangers of cutting down trees, and I know if the factory will be polluting the land, which in the long term will affect the people. But for them, they don't see it that way. They see it as the white man who used our resources in the past has come to tell us, don't use your resources because it is bad for you. Even though I gained, you shouldn't speak about that. So I think there is a very strong reason here to educate the masses. And journalism maybe, and a lot of other interventions, but that's just what I wanted to share. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, but it can be problematic, of course, if the white man stops the African from developing in a way that works, or if it is from the wrong intentions. So there is the question for me as a white man, and this is not about race, this conversation, this is about pollution, but it's still, how do you have this conversation, and how can we help each other, and where can we help each other? But maybe if someone we could maybe go to the next question with, if you guys don't mind. There's two other questions I would like to try with the group. and this is more a little exercise that we can do to help. Is I know it's already late where you are in some places, so let's try to keep it short-ish. The first question is, we've had a long conversation, but maybe you can help us by putting in the chat, so in writing, if you would have to describe what is the most fundamental problem when it comes to pollution and the fact that it remains there, that we're not tackling it faster, that it's just the whole problem of pollution. What is the most fundamental cause or the root cause of it? How would you formulate that? Put it in some words, because it's important before we look at solutions to try to get a better grasp on what is the fundamental problem. So put it in the chat. Just your ideas around that. That helps us. We also capture this in our notes, and it helps to guide us as we move forward with this. And we try to strengthen it with also scientific evidence, etc. But it's also, we believe that also the common experience and different perspectives is also very valuable on this. And of course, you have, like, the problem can be different in different locations, but it's good to have a sense of that from all of you.